It's time for the Charlotte FC podcast. Nick Finelli here with the Charlotte FC podcast. I am joined today with Christian Miles, who will be commentating on the match against Columbus this weekend. And so, Christian, welcome to the podcast. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you covered the match in Orlando, so they've heard your voice before, but tell us a little bit about you.
Oh, hey, Nick. Thanks, first of all, for having me on. A pleasure to be with you. Yeah, I'm just in year 3 of the MLS Season Pass package with Apple TV and loving each and every minute of it. It's been so lucky to have some great games and be a part of great crews. But for those that don't know, I'm kind of a soccer file going all the way back to the mid-90s in terms of being involved in soccer media, starting at Fox and then working my way through Major League Soccer and some time spent locally here in Southern California with the LA Galaxy and other teams. So if there's been a game on TV, I've probably been a part of it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And you did the radio for LA Galaxy, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Somebody did their homework. Yeah. I was a part of the radio broadcast for 8 years with the great Joe Tutino, who's a legend in Southern California circles, sports radio, specifically a guy who's a wonderful guy who's been with the Galaxy since from the get-go, since 96. So it was a real learning experience, a lot of fun, because those were the lean years for the Galaxy, the Guillermo Barros Esqueloto years and such. So it was a tough spell.
Yeah. And they're going through a tough spell now too.
True. Very tough.
At least. All right. So going into this match, all the Charlotte fans know what's going on, the slump, all these things, but there are key storylines that are going to happen. And for the most part, Charlotte has played Columbus pretty well. So what are you thinking looking into this, maybe from both sides? What are the kind of the key things you're thinking about this match?
Well, one, they're going against the class of the league in the Columbus Crew, in my opinion. And, it was a real entertaining theatrical game the last time they met about 3 weeks ago. And so they have their work cut out for them and they don't come in on the best of form. And it's a side that's kind of trying to find the right balance, I think is the best way to look at it, Nick. We think of Charlotte and everyone was putting them in the conversation with MLS Cup, perhaps contenders or favorites thereabouts in a top 3 or 4 finish in the regular season. And things were, airtight at the back. And now a side that's kind of chopped and changed with a little bit of formation tweaks, and they've really become unhinged at the back. And suddenly a thing that was a sure thing at the back is now become a big, huge question mark. And, a lot of finger pointing. I think it's kind of a mystery, to be honest with you. I don't think they really understand why, because the search for solutions amidst all this chopping and changing leads me to believe that there's a team that's trying to find a solution and just can't find it. And, they're dropping some results against some of the better teams after, some decent results against some of the other teams in MLS. So it's been a rough run. That loss in the US Open Cup was, kind of a sucker punch and compounding the misery in MLS and those 5 consecutive defeats. So, but sometimes at this point, it's good for a team in a way because, it's cliche, but you get back to basics and you get back to, what you do well and try and distill soccer down into its simplest form. And when you think about Dean Smith, I think of him as a manager who likes to make it simple. There's nothing complex about his tactics. There's nothing overly intricate in their play. And I think that may suit a manager of his ilk. Say, hey, you know what, guys, let's just do what we do well. Let's drop back and do what we were doing at the beginning of the year and get back to the basics.
Now, if you have two defenders that are out and kind of created that imbalance, how do you get back to basics in that you're plugging these guys in to play pieces that maybe, were pretty more stable. And now these, you're trying different things to see what works.
Yeah.
How can you get back to basics knowing you're not going to have these folks for a while and these other people have to either learn or, get something right because it's just not gelling?
Yeah. It's kind of like, baptism by fire. And you find out this is when you have your academies. This is when the squad depth is tested, because now we're seeing that those fixtures come fast and furious, and you have to throw these young kids. It's time for the Pekoviches to come step into the fray as well, and perhaps bolster the center of the park. And Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy, looking for him to come good, who I think has a tremendous upside. Just a little bit more work and refinement on the defensive end for him, and I think he might be looking at one of the better wing backs / fullbacks in MLS. And it's when I thought of Charlotte. It's Nick. I always thought of how wonderful that back four was. Even going back to last year. When you think of Malanda, you think of Privet, and it's their experimentation with Dean Smith and seeing Privet kind of left out in the cold in the match against Orlando. So, trying to find that right combination and get back to what they were doing before, I think is going to be, and find an understanding, because I think guys sometimes are playing in roles that they're not accustomed to and not suiting their strengths.
Yeah. So do you compensate for that and have maybe more or less kind of play and pull back, or not against Columbus because they'll just tear you apart anyway?
I think it's a team you can't afford to be opened up against, personally. I mean, I think, it's a team that you have to sit off of in almost a mid-block, if you will. And because you get behind you and they will absolutely tear you apart, whether it be, Aliou, Rossi, Gazdag on the left-hand side has been a really good fit. And then those wingers coming in with Farsi and the likes of Arston, they are a menace, whether you're attacking in a front four, a front five, and then they have real steady center of the park with Chambeau and Nagbe. So you can't really open yourself up because they're there for the taking. And I think when we saw Charlotte playing with three, such as we saw at times in Orlando, I don't really think it suits their strengths personally. It's not. It really doesn't. It really surprised me to see that from Dean Smith, going even back to his Aston Villa days. But he's trying to find a system that suits the strengths of his players. And right now, that's kind of an unknown, of this team. We know what it was in the past, but the unknown presently right now is what is trying to be figured out.
Does it make you feel like the strength of someone like Nathan Byrne is really sorely missed, and it's not just the system, like how good a player he was in securing some of these things?
Yeah, in fact, Dean told me the last time I talked with him a few weeks ago is that he's a player that's sorely missed ball progression out of midfield. There's a question of moving things around in the center of the park, whether it's Bronico or Gianni, and Ashley Westwood getting a little longer in the tooth, who's a bit almost loyal to a fault, played each and every single minute this season. Trying to find that understanding of the center park is and provide that protection for a defense that's been chopping and changing a little bit. You throw in Kalina having a blunder or two, who can be forgiven, considering he does have a newborn baby right now, so you don't want to throw him under the bus too much. But he's not the Christian Kalina, of MLS goalkeeper of the year in 2024. I think we can all say that safely and assuredly. So you need that protection, I believe, and that's another kind of piece of the jigsaw puzzle that they're trying to figure out right now. I think there's goals in this team. I mean, it's impressive with Patrick, who continues to show greater sophistication. The end product may be a little bit lacking, but Liel's a nice piece. BL coming in, and when he's on form, is tremendously influential in creating chances. Sometimes pulls a vanishing act in slightest regards, but when he's on, he is brilliant. And of course, Zaha running those channels in the half spaces. So I think on the front end, it's good, and they're trying to open up and create more because things are a little stagnant, but they become unbalanced. And we've seen it, in the Chicago result. They're conceding too many goals, flat out. I mean, it sounds cliche, but they are conceding too many goals, and everybody knows in this business that's where you have to address the first line. You have to address that first problem at the back, because without that foundation, it's really difficult. Unless you're the 2024 LA Galaxy with Ricky Puig coming forward, it's hard to play the run and gun, outshoot your opponent 4-3 day in and day out in Major League Soccer.
Yeah, and it's almost like they're giving too much space to the opposition in that final third to create something and do something before clamping down.
Yeah.
And I think that's making goals that you wouldn't see in other places. All of a sudden, these are happening because these shots are being taken uncontested.
And it'd be interesting to see if we see, Scardina come into perhaps a different role. I know he's been playing on the right side. Highly versatile player, so he might be given a run out in a different role, perhaps. I think it's time to really find. It's almost grasping at straws at this point, trying to address that, and you don't want this to get out of hand because
Yeah.
you really don't. Because you don't want a blip in form. I know 5 consecutive defeats in a U.S. Open Cup ouster is more than a blip in form, but you don't want to take that next leap into crisis mode and where you really start doing deep psychological damage and find yourself
Right.
cast adrift.
Especially at home.
Correct. And that's another thing.
So,
The home form has been tremendous, Nick, and now we're seeing little cracks in the armor.
yeah. So you've been talking to Columbus. How are you feeling they're doing? Because it took them a while to get started, but now all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, this is the Columbus we remember.
Oh, well, anybody it is the Columbus. It's a great way to put it. I really think you hit the nail on the head. The results don't show it, Nick, on the back of 3 consecutive draws, but there's a team that plays just wonderful football when they're on. They had Cincinnati really under the cosh in the late stage of the second half. I had a chance to speak with Wilfred Nancy this week, and I asked him, are you a little upset because there's a massive imbalance in play? I thought, in his words, they did everything in that game. They deserved the 3 points. They outplayed Cincinnati. They had their chances, couldn't take them. And that's kind of becoming a recurring theme. But, Nancy, who's a much wiser man than me, was rather nonchalant and kind of brushed it off and said, I don't care. As long as our chances are there, as long as we're creating those chances, we will be fine. Yes, the goals will come, and that's not what I'm worried about right now. And whether or not that's manager speak to the media and people like me, or it's something that's being discussed, I think it's something that it has to be addressed, and it's something I'm sure that they're working on in an area of focus in this game. Like, yes, you can create all these chances and you can have all these opportunities, but at the end of the day, you've got to score goals, and that's something, for all of their brilliant play and wonderful short passing and interplay and movement. Is this a team that might perhaps be lacking a little bit of that killer instinct in a number 9 role up top? And that might be, one of the, kryptonite points for this Columbus side, that they don't have that out and out number 9 goal scorer. So,
Yeah.
but behind them, they've got it all.
Yeah, definitely. I see that a lot in managers, especially the ones who've had, long careers, been able to, like, they know it's about chances and the chances will come. So they're patient enough to know we're a good team. We're going to be fine. We just need to kind of put it together when it matters.
Yeah, I think you're right. And there's an X factor here, Gazdag coming in and changing things. And he's, still acclimating, after coming in just last month. So that's a key figure. And it's a completely different football he's playing with the likes of Columbus than we saw, with Bradley Carnell in Philadelphia and going back even to the Jim Curtin years. So he's still getting used to it. He's getting accustomed. I know that, Nancy's had some conversations with him, and there's a little growing frustration that he hasn't found the back of the net this season with Columbus. So, but assuredly he's behind his man. And once those two come together, and it's going to be that mobile, front 3 where you see Rossi dropping off, coming out wide left, and Gazdag coming in. And, really difficult. It's flummoxed a lot of defenses, whether they're in a back 3 or back 4 or in a low block of 6.
Because you've watched a lot of Columbus, can you kind of break down what really makes it so difficult to really play against them and beat them? I know, like you said, they've had several draws in a row, but they're really difficult to beat. And it's not necessarily their defense, but it's more of what they do in other spots. Not saying that their defense is bad. It's just, it seems like there's something else.
What I see with them is they're tremendous in possession. They have the most possession in all Major League Soccer. And what that gives them, not only, best defense is a good offense, to use that mantra, but also in the fact that it's not as simple as that. They put themselves into great situations when they do lose possession of the ball. They're already in a great shape because they've got a front 3 that will press when they need to. They've got those wide areas covered with Arston and Farsi, who will also join in and press. And with Nagby up there pushing up higher and supported the team, the way that they hold their lines together, I think really makes it difficult for the opposition when Columbus loses possession and trying to progress through. They're hunters, if you will, when they cough it up and able to win it back very quickly and in higher advanced positions. And that makes them very difficult. And they have some great players. I mean, Chambaud was a wonderful get for them. Nagby is Darlington Nagby, who's, a winner in this league for over a decade, and Diego Rossi as well, tried and proven and tested at the international level. And so it's a good group. It's a group I think that fits what Nancy is trying to do right now.
So how does Charlotte, we already talked about them kind of shoring up the defense, no easy shots, easy ends. How do they offensively get to Columbus? Are they going to have to go over the top because of the midfield and just hope that they can get some counters?
With the crew, adopting a back three and using a wing back system, there is space to be afforded if you can break those lines, if you can break that mid block. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Charlotte go direct, whether that be over the top or through, and trying to find those pockets and get behind that line of the likes of, once they break that first forward line from Columbus, but trying to get behind the likes of Nagbe and Chambeau and have themselves run out, especially in wide areas. If they can get Zaha on the ball, running at the likes, of Morera, or you throw in Lia Labata coming in and trying to take on Amundsen, who's also has, forward inclinations. There's space out there to be had. And the best way to do that is to attack that space. That's how you attack a back threes. Try and get it wide, go direct, and, perhaps, more of an accentuation on those wide areas. But I think it's going to be a big game when Charlotte is on the ball, when they're on the front foot, for players like Zaha, like Abada. And it's about time for, Zaha. We know what he's capable of, but it's about time for him to consistently come good week in and week out, despite having that wonderful pedigree and that wonderful reputation.
Right. He played the inside channel a bit more than we've seen him this year. He's mainly been playing wide in that Orlando match that you were calling. He also did that in Chicago, but we didn't necessarily have the same type of results. I mean, he got a goal, but in the previous one. But do you feel like with Columbus going back wide again is a better bet for him?
I think we would see him in wider roles, right? Even going back to his Crystal Palace days, he's a player that has that, natural inclination to play in that half space. He likes that, almost that corridor of uncertainty between that central defender and fullback, and tries to exploit that space. Still has the pace to do that, even though he's into his 30s. But yeah, a guy who can get into that final third and wreak havoc. And when he does, he's got a great nose for goal. It's the linking and the understanding, I think, that's just not come together, with Ajiman and Abada and even BL farther behind them. Chances haven't come in abundance. And when they have come on occasion, that they haven't been able to take them. And I think that's kind of, it's always the last thing that comes together when you have a new group of players playing together. And, Zaha his feet are still getting his feet wet, so to speak. But, it's time to bed in here. We're getting into early June, we're getting into, the third, fourth month of play. So it's time for that team to start to gel and attack. You'd like to see those patterns of play develop, and just not seeing it right now, despite some great moments of brilliance.
Right. And it's more of the results. If you go back and look at a lot of the matches, it's more of these spells that they're lapsing in defense, and those are the ones that are costing them, and then they're playing from behind as opposed to, being ahead. I think an early goal would benefit Charlotte more than anything, just because of a confidence, being at home, and then also just playing a different style than having to play from behind, because it has been difficult for them.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. An early goal is crucial to them, and one, it would lift their confidence that we all know needs a lot of help at this point too. But you don't want to play into the hands of a Columbus Crew. Ironically, looking at that, it really wouldn't change the approach, I don't think, for Charlotte too much if they did get that early goal, because Columbus are going to be on the ball for long stretches in this, and they're going to boss a lot of possession. And with the likes of Chambeau and the player of the caliber of Nagbe and the support behind him, they're going to have a good run in midfield. They're going to have a good share of it. So Ashley Westwood has to come good in here, and he's got that pit bull in him, and he's going to need to be at his best. The Charlotte captain, whether it be Gianni, whether it be Bronico inside or someone else, that's a major aspect of this game, and how they're going to press the likes of Rossi when they're starting, when Columbus is starting their build.
Yeah. So having covered soccer in so many different areas, different leagues and things like that, how are you feeling like the MLS of today is stacking up on the global stage?
Well, it's interesting. I've seen this league since the beginning, and its growth, it's incredible. It's undeniable as well in terms of the business sense and how it's grown. And I was around the days when there were 12 teams in this league, and now we're up to 30.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible, and it's great to see the quality of play certainly has elevated itself. And you have to give them a big pat on the back. 30 years now, it's the next step in evolution where MLS needs to gain a foothold in international respectability on the global stage, and that starts with winning the CONCACAF Champions Cup, not just the odd year, consistently performing well in these international tournaments here. And, just as opposed to be more of an outlier in the international scheme, becoming more of a bigger player, a bigger presence. And we'll see if there's some changes on the way in terms of calendar and schedule. Certainly that's kind of an obstruction towards MLS and trying to fit in with the European system and the big boys of soccer in South America as well. But it's been tremendous to watch it grow. It's been fun. There's been, there's the naysayers that say the league is diluted, but I think it's opened up more opportunities for players, both domestically and, we've seen the foreign influx of players since 2007 when Beckham came over, and even before that. And now the growing phenomenon of these younger South American players really flourishing in this league and, having a good time here, and also using it as a springboard for greater success in bigger leagues. So it's nice to see that see this league gain in respect for, hey, this guy played in MLS. Let's have a good look at him and bring him to one of these bigger leagues, or let's bring him over to Europe.
Right.
And that's kind of a testament to its pedigree.
Nice. All right. So you're going to cross the country, head over here. What do you do when you get to Charlotte? What do you do? Have you covered a match here? I can't remember.
It's, I haven't been to Charlotte since last year, and I'm remiss because I can't remember the games because there's so many. I was out there with the great Shep Messing, wonderful guy.
I remember that.
Yes, and I love coming out to Charlotte. They're wonderful people, great. The fan base is incredible at the bank. The supporting staff, the administrative people at Charlotte, always a trip I look forward to. So, I don't know about your taste in Hawaiian shirts, but it's a colorful atmosphere, a great club. It's always fun to come out to Charlotte. I never have a bad time. And it's nice to get a taste of the city life too, for a West Coast guy like me who has in-laws and family in the Carolinas. I always love coming out to the Charlotte area.
Nice. Do you have like a certain rituals or things you do when you go to other cities? Like, some people like to just go to a local bar or restaurant and kind of hang out with the folks and kind of ask questions. Like, what are you doing?
Oh, well, the travel schedule is very tight, so I don't have a heck of a lot of free time. But when I do have time in the city, I drop the bags off and go stretch the legs after a long flight and go for a walk and grab a bite to eat and have a beer or something, and depending on the hour, strike up a conversation with someone. Try and keep it soccer centric if we can. And the following day is really spent in the hotel room, fine honing the points that we're going to address. Working with the production staff who's been tremendous this year. A pleasure to work with. Working with them to really fine tune our broadcasts and bring the best quality product we can to Apple and MLS.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time today, and thanks for coming on and sharing this, and look forward to hearing your call this weekend.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you in a few days.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Nick.
Again, thanks for listening to another episode of the Charlotte FC podcast, where we bring you the fascinating people who work for and around Charlotte FC and the world of football. The Charlotte FC podcast is edited and produced by me, Nick Finelli, and Eli Finelli. Please help us out and share this episode with others. 5 stars, and follow CLTFC Podcast on Instagram, X, and YouTube. Until next time, enjoy the day.